All right. So it looks like we have a few registrants already joining in. Welcome, everyone. For everyone that's joining right now, we're going to give everyone a few minutes to go ahead and get in the webinar. While you guys are all joining, please feel free to let us know in the chat where you guys are joining from and what you guys do on Fiverr. Also, everyone that is joining, make sure that when you send something in the chat that you set it to everyone and not just hosts and panelists so everyone can see your messages in the chat. All right, we have Las Vegas, Bangladesh, Pakistan, London, international, very nice. India, Toronto, Panama. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for attending today. So for everyone that's just joining now, like I said, we're going to give everyone a few more minutes to join before we go ahead and kick off the presentation today. Hey, Camilo.
Are you seeing that? Mm-hmm. Nice. Start. They're already late. I don't know.
All right, so it looks like we just have a few more people trickling in, but I think it's safe to go ahead and begin. So once again, everyone, thank you so much for joining. Everyone that's in the chat right now, sending where they're coming from, what they do on Fiverr. First of all, thank you so much. If you guys are sending messages in the chat, please make sure to change the option from hosts and panelists to everyone, just so everyone can see your messages accordingly. Throughout the webinar, if you guys have any comments that you'd like to make, obviously feel free to go ahead and throw them in the chat. We will also have a Q&A section at the end of this webinar where we will answer some questions from the audience. So if you guys have any actual specific questions you want answered, please don't put them in the chat. Please go ahead and put them in the Q&A section so we can make sure to get to those accordingly. I'm going to go ahead and just quickly introduce myself really quick before I pass the webinar along to our presenters. My name is Brandon. I'm one of the success team leads here at Fiverr. And once again, I just want to thank everyone for joining. I'm going to go ahead and allow my colleague Sam quickly to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Samantha. I'm one of the seller success managers. I'm super excited that you're all here, and hopefully you learn a lot of these tips, tricks, and tactics that Noah and Adrian are going to talk about, but welcome.
Awesome. And last but not least, going to go ahead and allow our two presenters to take over, Adrian and Noah. And like I said, any questions, please make sure to put them in the Q&A, and anything else you can feel free to go ahead and throw in the chat.
So hi, everybody. My name is Adrian, and I'm joined here today by Noah. We're both dedicated seller success managers here at Fiverr, and we're really happy to have all of you here joining us today, as we will be going over a topic that we do get a lot of questions during our calls and over by email as well. So really happy to have that opportunity to go over with you the top rated seller. So like Brendan mentioned, definitely feel free to drop your questions on the Q&A chat, and we are going to have some time after the presentation to go over. And I know that the first question that you might be asking yourself is, what is a top rated seller? So the top rated seller is actually going to represent the best out of the best of what Fiverr has to offer. And the top rated seller is a badge that is actually going to take some time for us to be able to achieve. It's not a quick process, and it is going to demand some patience as well as some time. But the good thing is that it does have the value behind as well, as the buyers know that those sellers that do achieve the badge are providing the buyers with the most the exceptional professionalism, and also with focus on the buyer satisfaction.
So on top of becoming a top rated seller, you do receive additional benefits. One of them being you get up to 30 active gigs, priority support, and a 7-day clearing time. It is important to know that as part of the Seller Plus program, you do already receive priority support and a 7-day clearing time. But since they are benefits of the top rated seller, we did want to make sure that you were aware of them. Of course, the greatest benefit is the top rated seller badge. This allows you to be filtered as a top-rated seller and increases your clickability, just because top-rated seller is a well-known sign on Fiverr of someone who has excellent quality.
Awesome. So part of the requirements to become a top-rated seller will be the baseline metrics that we have. You're probably already familiar with it as we have available on our profile. One thing that is very important that we need to keep in mind when it comes to those requirements is that once we meet them, it doesn't mean that we're automatically going to be promoted to top-rated seller, but that means that from that point on, we're then eligible to be promoted. There are other points that are also going to be relevant throughout the process, and we're also going to go into that in just a little bit. But starting off with the requirements itself, the first two that we have here will be the total earnings, which we need to meet $20,000, and the selling seniority, which we need to meet 180 days as a seller to qualify. These two requirements, they do take a little bit more of time in order for us to complete them. But the good thing is that once we meet them, we no longer need to worry as much when it comes to the maintenance itself. And also, these two requirements are requirements that as we're focusing on the other ones that we have as well, we're going to naturally be making progress to these requirements as well. The other requirements that we have here are going to be more related to the actual buyer's experience and their satisfaction in the marketplace. So another factor that would be extremely relevant when it comes to this ones is that we would need to make sure that we're also being consistent with these metrics, not only to make sure that we are focusing on the buyer satisfaction, but also to make sure that we're month after month constantly delivering that to not only be eligible for the promotion, but also avoid any possible risk of demotion as well. So the first requirement that we have here will be the ratings, which we will need to maintain 4.7 or higher. It's a rating that you're probably already familiar with, as we see very often in the marketplace itself. And what we recommend is to treat every buyer as if it's their first order. And the reason for that is because a buyer that is recently joining Fiverr, that is perhaps their first order with us, they might not be as used to the process, as familiar to what is expected from them, what to expect from you as well. So being polite, being professional, being patient, and providing as much details as possible can definitely go a long way on communicating with those buyers. And one thing that is also important to keep in mind is that we can remind the buyers that about the reviews that they are going to receive. We're just not able to guide them to a positive review.
Another requirement is the overall response rate. And this is pretty easy metric to keep on top of. You just have to make sure you're responding to certain messages within those first 24 hours. And a good tactic to kind of help build up is, instead of trying to respond past the 12-hour mark, try and get those messages responded in under 12 hours. This greatly increases the chance of you converting that message into an order. And some simple tips you can use to keep on top of your messages is make sure you're utilizing the mobile app. That way you can respond on the go and when you're away from your home computer, as well as make sure you're utilizing the quick responses. Quick responses can be an incredibly powerful tool to let a buyer know that you've received their message, but you're currently away and will get back to them as soon as possible, or have a great outstanding welcome message. The key here is we want to make sure that we're customizing our quick responses to each buyer. So we're including the name and maybe what they're discussing. That way it doesn't feel like a cold robotic message, but actually a warm and friendly and welcoming message. And then last but not least, if you do receive spam messages, just make sure to report with them. And if you'd like, you can respond to them as well to stop the clock there. Then moving on to on-time delivery. Once again, very simple. We just got to make sure we're not delivering our orders late and taking advantage of the resolution center when necessary. Some simple tips here are make sure we're clearly stating our workflow process and setting realistic delivery times. If the buyer understands, this is going to take 10 days, then we got to make sure we're delivering in 10 days. If we need more time, maybe we're finding we're often running up against the clock, give yourself an extra 1 to 2 days. That way you don't encounter that issue. And then if you do feel like, hey, we may be coming up against the clock, I may need some more time, make sure to ask for a delivery extension. Most buyers are fairly understanding when it comes to these situations. We just want to make sure we provide these delivery extensions with enough time to where the buyer can see it and approve it. And then if you do feel yourself becoming overwhelmed, make sure you're using the order limits, the orders in queue limit. That way you're not taking on too many orders and you fall behind. So this can be an incredibly powerful tool, especially as you start to build momentum as a seller and get more and more orders. And then last but not least, just explaining the delivery process to the buyer can really help clear up any confusion that they might have and set expectations right. And then the last requirement we need is the order completion rate. And this is simply the number of cancellations subtracted from the total orders over the last 60 days. And we just want to make sure we're avoiding cancellations is the key point here. So how do we do that? We make sure to keep up communication with the buyer. This means providing updates even when they don't ask and involving them in the order process or in the workflow. So they feel that in the end product, they were involved and it was what they were envisioning. And then of course, as I mentioned before, don't be late. Once you are late, the buyer is entitled to cancel. So definitely, make sure we're delivering on time. And then finally, avoid suggesting cancellation as an option. I know it can be tempting sometimes when you're encountering a difficult buyer, but always try and work things out and reconcile with the buyer.
Awesome. And that covers the part for the requirements. As I mentioned before, once we meet those requirements, it doesn't guarantee that we're already going to be promoted. There's also the other aspects that go beyond those basic requirements. And the other part of the process is going to lead us to take into consideration, how are we presenting ourselves in the marketplace? How are we presenting ourselves professionally? So as part of the Seller Plus program, a great advantage that we have is that we do have access to the webinars that are made available on the Seller Plus page. And I would definitely recommend checking it out, the webinar that we have specifically for gig optimization, which was led by our friend Chris, which is another dedicated seller success manager here at Fiverr. And he did an amazing job really breaking down all the sections that we have for the gigs and really how can we optimize those gigs to be successful in the marketplace. So I'll definitely recommend checking it out as we'll go in depth into these points that we recommend. So for the tags and title, what we recommend is to making sure that we are always utilizing 5 tags to make sure that we are meeting all the words that we can in order to increase our impressions for our gigs as well. One thing that is important with the keywords as well is that we want to try to avoid completely to repeat those keywords between the title and the tags as well. For the gig image is a great opportunity for us to really draw the buyer's attention and captivate them to want to click on our gig. So one thing that is really important for us to keep in mind is utilizing colors that will draw their attention, as well as having a description within that gig image so that it's easier for them to also identify what your gig is about. For the description, it's a great opportunity for us to go ahead and share as much details and as much information as we can with the buyers to set the proper expectations. What will the process look like as we are communicating